Hello, welcome to the channel Why Stories. Enjoy watching.
Upon inheriting a dilapidated hut, a nurse fired for theft reluctantly traveled to the village. But upon looking into the old stove on her late grandmother's advice, Ariel ran with all her might, but these attempts couldn't fundamentally change the situation. She was hopelessly late. Cursing everything under the sun, the girl dashed to the elevator and, pressing the call button, pleaded, "Little elevator, please hurry. Maria is going to tear me to pieces." But the lifting device didn't heed the young nurse's pleas. The elevator stopped at every floor of the medical facility and only arrived at the first floor after almost 2 minutes. Ariel tried to slip into the cabin, but a hefty woman in a knitted jacket accosted her. "Where do you think you're going, Miss Plague? Let people out first." The girl stepped back, but corrected the woman. "Not people out, but let people out." The woman disdainfully said, "Look who's the grammarian. Wipe your snotty nose first, then you can correct me." Since the large woman blocked the passage with her mass, the other elevator passengers decided to express their annoyance. "Woman, what kind of market have you created here? People are late for their procedures, let them through." The woman emerged from the cabin but then froze like a statue in front of Ariel. "Direct all complaints at this little troublemaker. She's the one who started this mess." While the woman was explaining, everyone else managed to exit the elevator, but Ariel couldn't slip into the cabin because the automatic doors slammed shut right in front of her and the elevator went up again. The woman smugly summed up, "Well, beauty, you got what you fought for." Desperation overwhelmed the girl, and she blurted out, "Go to hell." The woman was stunned, her eyes bulging with outrage, but Ariel had already disappeared. The girl decided not to tempt fate anymore and climbed to her department on foot. She skipped steps, thinking only of one thing, just to avoid being seen by the head nurse. But as they say, what you fear most will definitely happen. Bursting into the hall, Ariel saw Mudara. The head nurse was talking to a strange woman, and the tardy nurse tried to sneak into the department unnoticed. She almost succeeded, but at the last stretch, Patricia's sarcastic voice rang out. "Lopez, halt! Where are you rushing off to in such a hurry?" Ariel's tongue tied in knots from nervousness. "Patricia, I overslept just a tiny bit. The alarm didn't ring, but I swear it won't happen again." The head nurse barked. "March to the department. I'll talk to you later." Ariel ran towards the service room, but she could clearly hear Mudara complaining to her companion. "Look, they send us young reinforcements. They do whatever they want. No discipline." The girl muttered, "It rots from the head. You should start with yourself, Patricia, and impose discipline. Or is everything allowed for the management?" Ariel abruptly opened the door to the nurse's room. She started to hastily change, but her process was interrupted by Maria Cano. The nurse, whom Ariel was supposed to relieve on time, didn't even say hello. "Lopez, this is audacity. Last time you were right on the dot, and today you're 10 minutes late. Stop being so cheeky." Ariel made a pained face. "Maria, forgive this miscreant. It just happened. I was on a night shift yesterday and had to get up again in the morning. That's why I overslept." Maria snorted angrily. "Ariel, I'm not interested in your problems. I have enough of my own. Every minute is precious to me, and you're really letting me down." Ariel smiled. "Maria, please don't be angry. Next time I'll relieve you an hour early." Kano's face lit up. "I'm holding you to your word. Come on, change faster and take over the shift." "I'm almost ready, just need to put on my slippers." Kano thoughtfully said, "You're strange, Lopez. I've been watching you closely for 3 months and I can't understand what thoughts swirl in your silly head. Normal people try to avoid trouble, but you deliberately seek it out." Fixing her hair in the mirror, Ariel asked, "I wonder, in what way does my abnormality manifest?" Maria's lips curved into a scornful smirk. "Take your attitude towards the patients, for instance. You try to please everyone. You can't coddle patients, they'll quickly get the better of you. Lopez raised her eyebrows in surprise. Maria, can it really be any other way? Shouldn't every healthcare worker be compassionate? That's what they taught us in college. Kano pushed the girl toward the door. Spare me the propaganda. Work here a few years, you'll forget all the doctrines they fed you in college. Kano felt like she was in charge, being older than Ariel and having more practical experience. She believed these two facts gave her the full right to mentor the young colleague. Once, the head nurse witnessed this mentoring process and was very pleased. Mudara even went so far as to put an arm around Kano. Well done, Maria. Taking initiative with the newcomer. I think it's a very positive example that should be spread in our department. The head nurse's praise was balm to Maria's soul, and she redoubled her efforts with the newcomer. Her constant lessons were a strain on Ariel, and in recent weeks the girl had increasingly thought about transferring to another department. But she had not yet shared her intentions with anyone. Lopez sighed in relief when Maria Kano finally left the department. She went through her daily tasks on autopilot, pondering the oddities of her life. It was nearing lunchtime when Mudara appeared at the door of the office and said imperiously, "Lopez, come here for a minute." Since orders in medicine are as strict as in the army, Ariel rushed at the command of her superior. Crossing the threshold of the office, she stood at attention. "I'm listening, Patricia." From Mudara's expression, it was clear she was barely holding back her irritation. She stared at the young nurse for a minute, then asked, "Ariel, I've tried several times to get through to you, but you don't hear me." The girl's voice fell. "Did I do something wrong again?" The head nurse rolled her eyes. "Oh, Lord, where do such fools come from?" "Lopez, don't play naive, you understand everything perfectly. So I'm warning you for the last time, one more tardiness and you're out like a champagne cork." Ariel performed something akin to a bow. "I'll take note of your remark, I'll try not to violate work discipline anymore." Mudara slowed her pace a bit. "Try to, do me a favor. Also, I want to remind you that familiar relations with patients are unacceptable in our hospital." Ariel muttered confusedly. "But I mean well." "You can mean well at home. Here, you must adhere to medical ethics rules. And these rules do not include familiarity in any form." Mudara took a breath and added mockingly, "I understand you want to win over the patients, but it's a cheap tactic and it's not welcomed here, so you should think carefully about your behavior. You may go." Ariel felt as if she had been doused with a bucket of sewage. After the conversation with the head nurse, she couldn't focus on her work for a long time. Everything literally slipped through her hands, so she was overjoyed when Leah Hernandez appeared half an hour early. "I hope you're not upset that I decided to relieve you a bit early. I often had to work around the clock in my youth." Lopez was so moved she was nearly in tears. "Oh, Leah, thank you so much. You're really my guardian angel. I can't think straight by the end of the shift," and the head nurse scolded me. The smile slipped from Leah's face. "Again? I don't understand why Patricia has attached herself to you. Clearly, you've crossed her path somewhere." Ariel was embarrassed. "I'm constantly racking my brains trying to solve this puzzle, but I can't think of anything." Hernandez furrowed her brow, indicating intense mental effort. Ariel patiently observed her senior colleague, even moving closer to her. "Leah, do you have any theory on this?" Hernandez spoke thoughtfully. "There's a thought. I might be exaggerating, but maybe it's all related to Medical Workers' Day." Lopez looked at her replacement with a puzzled expression. "I don't understand. What are you talking about?" Leah smirked. "Girl, I can't believe you have such a short memory. It's been just over a month since our professional holiday. I clearly remember how you lit up the dance floor with one respectable gentleman." "And what?" "That, my dear, was Patricia's husband. It's a well-known fact that Mudara likes the younger ones. And you know how Patricia feels about her husband's weaknesses." Ariel, holding her breath, asked. How does she feel? Leah looked at the girl in surprise. Lopez, you must be from another world if you ask such unforgivably stupid questions. I accept that you might lack life experience, but not understanding the basics is too much. The girl gasped, covering her mouth with her hand. You think the head nurse is retaliating against me out of jealousy? Hernandez answered evasively. I'm not sure, it's just one theory. But I want to give you a friendly advice. Do not provoke the head nurse. Mudara is vindictive. She ousted her predecessor through scheming, and she'd swallow you whole without chewing. Ariel thought about her friend's warning all evening. Leah was the only person in the department she could trust. Everyone else looked down on Lopez, and the girl quickly developed what's called the white crow effect. Ariel first experienced this unpleasant feeling when she was just 5 years old. She barely remembered her mother, having lost her maternal care very early. Her mother had suffered from some incurable disease and died soon after giving birth to her daughter. Initially, her father tried to provide everything so she wouldn't feel deprived. Gonzalo even hired a woman to look after the child in his absence, but his widowerhood was short-lived. Ariel vividly remembered the day when her father brought an unfamiliar woman home and told his daughter, Ariel, meet Marianne. I hope you two will get along. Desperate for maternal affection, the girl was ready to do anything to please her father's new wife. She soon started calling Marianne Mom, which pleased her father. I'm glad my girls are getting along. Now we have a full and quite happy family. But this rapid bonding did not sit well with Guacho, Marianne's son from her first marriage. Guacho was a whole 8 years older than his stepsister and immediately drew a line between himself and her. Hearing that the little one allowed herself such liberties, he cornered her and hissed threateningly. She's my mom, you hear, mine, and don't you dare try to act like her daughter. If I hear you call her mom again, I'll beat you and won't care that you're little. Ariel remembered the visceral fear she felt then for the rest of her life. She was afraid of Guacho's threats, so she tried to stay out of his sight. The changed behavior of his stepdaughter alarmed Marianne. She started probing the girl for reasons behind such drastic changes. The little one cried, but was afraid to confess that she was being pressured by her stepmother's son. Not achieving any clarity, Marianne complained to the father. Gonzalo, I don't want to alarm you, but something is wrong with Ariel. She hides like a hunted animal and behaves very strangely. Gonzalo decided to get to the bottom of it immediately. He interrogated his daughter intensely. Confess, you little rascal, what are you up to? Marianne is trying to brighten up your pathetic life, and you turn your nose up. Want to show off yourself? No, my dear, I won't allow you to torment a person. Each word of her father echoed painfully in the child's heart. Ariel trembled, afraid to raise her eyes, but Gonzalo paid no attention to his daughter's condition. He decided to force a confession from the girl and began shaking her. The girl went numb with horror, seeing her father's enraged face, but what scared her most were his eyes. She screamed desperately. Daddy, please, don't hit me, I won't do it again. What happened next, Ariel remembered very vaguely. Apparently, the punishment from her father was an unbearable ordeal for the nervous system of a 5-year-old child. The next day after her father's scolding, the girl fell ill. She trembled and cried out at every loud sound. Marianne was the first to sound the alarm and told her husband in the morning. Gonzalo, perhaps we should call a doctor, I don't like Ariel's condition. But the loving father dismissed it, not paying attention. Children sometimes pretend to get their way. Ariel might be very young, but she's quite cunning. Gonzalo didn't even consider visiting his daughter's room. Before leaving for work, he told his wife, I promise you that things will soon get better. And don't follow this little provocateur's lead, let her lie there and think about her behavior. Mariana asked in surprise, Should I not enter her room at all? The man confirmed, Not at all. And how about feeding her? It's fine, she can go hungry for a day, it will do her good. But the father's cruelty had the opposite effect. When Gonzalo returned from work in the evening, he first asked his wife, "How is our little troublemaker doing?" Mariana shrugged. "I don't know, I haven't checked on her. You told me not to enter her room." Guacho, who was present during the adults' conversation, decided to chip in. "When I peeked in, she was sleeping. I thought maybe the little one was thirsty and asked her, but she didn't respond. I checked again recently, and she's still asleep, just mumbling something indistinct." Gonzalo got worried. "I'll go check." He headed to his daughter's room, and Mariana hurried after him. "Gonzalo, at least take off your shoes and coat. I'm tired of cleaning up after you around the apartment." The man did not respond to the woman's complaints. As he stepped into the nursery, he immediately realized something was wrong with his little daughter. He rushed to the bed. "Ariel, wake up, open your eyes." But the girl did not respond to his cheerful voice. The man whispered in fright, "I think I went too far." He touched the little girl's forehead and immediately withdrew his hand. "She's burning up. Mariana, call an ambulance." Ariel had a fever. Grandma Diana, learning that her granddaughter was hospitalized, immediately rushed from the village. Without mincing words, she started to shame her son. "Gonzalo, how could you let this happen? You almost killed your own daughter. And for what? To please her and her offspring?" Diana pointed her finger at her daughter-in-law. Mariana was not used to such forward treatment and tried to put her mother-in-law in her place. "You may be my husband's mother, but I will not allow you to insult me in my own apartment." The elderly woman spat right at her daughter-in-law's feet. "Since when did this living space become your property? And who are you to dictate things in my son's house? You're the one who's been troubling my granddaughter. But I won't let this go." Gonzalo knew his mother well. He feared that she might carry out her threats and yelled, "Mother, think before you speak. Stop threatening my wife right now. She's innocent." Mariana tried to replace Ariel's mother, but the stubborn girl did everything to spite her. "Something strange has been going on with her lately. I think after she is discharged from the hospital, she definitely needs to see a child psychiatrist." Diana clenched her fists. "You should get checked first. I won't let you mistreat the child." Gonzalo laughed. "Mom, aren't you taking on a bit much? Can you really forbid me from raising my own child?" The elderly woman firmly said, "I can. If necessary, I'll file a report against you with the authorities." The son laughed in his mother's face again. "Mom, what kind of report?" "Just that. I'll write that you're a terrible father, that you allow that creature to torment your own child." The mother's challenging behavior outraged Gonzalo, and he pointed her to the door. "Out. Get out of here. And never come back here again." Mariana tried to hold her husband back from his rash action, but he was beyond control. The man flung the apartment door wide open and almost pushed the elderly woman out. Another mother, had she been in Diana's place at that moment, might have cried from the hurt inflicted by her son, perhaps even suffered a heart attack. But Gonzalo's mother had been through a tough life school and never panicked even in the most difficult situations. However, Diana didn't forgive offenses easily, not even from her only son. After Gonzalo kicked her out, she went to the hospital. Ariel was thrilled to see her grandmother. With tears in her eyes, the little girl pleaded with her. "Grandma, take me with you. I don't want to stay with Dad." The elderly woman cautiously asked, "Did Dad hurt you? Or maybe Mariana?" The girl burst into tears. "They all tell me that I'm bad, and Guacho said that I shouldn't call Mariana Mom, and if I do, he will beat me." Having gathered the necessary information, Diana headed to the guardianship authorities. Without any guilt, she filed a report against her own son. The elderly woman managed to convince the officials that her only granddaughter was in a dangerous situation, and they promised to investigate everything. The very next day, Gonzalo called her, accusing her of tarnishing his good name. "Mom, why did you make such a spectacle?" "Sure, I got a bit heated, but you should understand me, it's really hard on my own. Diana interrupted her son. You're a father and you should think of your daughter first. Her interests, not yours, should be paramount. Gonzalo, I don't want to cause you trouble, and I'm even willing to forget that you threw your own mother out. I can withdraw my complaint, but on one condition. Her son became wary. Which is? I'll take Ariel with me. She'll be safer with me, and no one will hurt her. Diana thought she heard Gonzalo sigh with relief. Okay, Mom, I won't object. Actually, this arrangement suits me fine because it will solve many problems. The elderly woman expected her son to fight for his paternal rights, but from the tone of his voice, she understood that he was relieved by her offer. Ariel's life in her grandmother's house could be called happy. Only occasionally did unpleasant memories visit her at night. Then she would cry from longing and hurt. She hoped that one day her father would come and ask for her forgiveness, but Gonzalo only visited his daughter once in several years. He brought her many gifts and enthusiastically talked about Guacho's successes. He wasn't interested in how Ariel was doing. Just before leaving, he happily announced, Ariel, you're going to have a little brother or sister soon. The girl received the news indifferently, and her grandmother looked reproachfully at her son. That's what you think is good news. You should visit more often so your daughter doesn't completely forget you, Daddy. Gonzalo pretended not to hear his mother's wish. After the birth of his son, he only occasionally called them, fulfilling his parental duty with those calls. Ariel decided to become a nurse when her grandmother fell ill. Diana was known not only for her iron will but also for her robust health. She had been widowed early, so she had to raise and educate her son alone. The need to care for her granddaughter made the elderly woman recall her past experience. Diana tried to ignore the weaknesses and ailments that often bothered her. She attributed her condition to age and was slow to seek medical help. She didn't tell her granddaughter about her symptoms because she didn't want to scare her. But time passed, and the situation only worsened. One day Ariel came home from school and saw an unusual scene. The house was in disarray, and her grandmother was lying in bed in the middle of the day. The girl was frightened. Grandma, what happened? Are you feeling ill? Diana smiled weakly. Don't worry, dear. It's nothing serious. I just feel a bit unwell today. I'll rest a little, and it will pass. Sorry, I didn't manage to prepare food. You must be hungry. Ariel wouldn't let her grandmother get up. Grandma, you stay in bed, I'll manage on my own. The girl quickly tidied up the house, then prepared dinner. But Diana's condition didn't improve, and she refused to eat. Arisha, you eat, don't mind me. I just don't have an appetite. Ariel became seriously worried. Grandma, let me run and fetch the paramedic to have a look at you. After much persuasion, the elderly woman finally agreed. All right, you win. Call Sergio. Maybe he can give me some pills because my head has been splitting for 2 days and the floor seems to sway whenever I stand up. There was a sharp shortage of medical personnel in rural areas. But in the village where they lived with her grandmother, there was still an operational medical post. Ariel jumped on her bike to catch the paramedic at work and rushed to the other end of the village. Sergio was just about to leave. After listening to the girl, he said with unmistakable regret, Not a single normal day. Yesterday I ran to old Magdalena at night, she had indigestion. This morning I saved the forester, who accidentally got caught in his own trap. I had to drive him to the district to get him cast. I lost the whole day with him. Now you've come to me almost at nightfall. Outrage poured out of the seasoned medic along with a stream of words. After expressing everything that had built up, Sergio asked with concern, Is your grandma really so unwell that it can't wait until morning? Ariel blurted out, No, Sergio, she can't get up. She says her head hurts a lot. The paramedic sadly concluded, Well, if she couldn't come to me herself, I guess I'll have to drag myself across the village. The rural medic sometimes allowed himself to complain about his unenviable fate, knowing that the villagers wouldn't take offense, as he had been safeguarding their health for over 3 decades and had saved countless lives during that time. This time, Sergio remained true to his calling. He grabbed his worn satchel and locked the medical post with a large barn lock. "Well, lead me to your grandmother." It's surprising that Diana suddenly took ill. She never complained about her health and worked like 3 people on the farm. "Yes, time is relentless. I'll be retiring soon too, and they can't seem to find a replacement for me." The man suddenly stopped and looked at Ariel. "Have you decided on a career yet? If I'm not mistaken, you are graduating from school this year?" The girl corrected the medic. "Not this year, next year. But I still don't know where I'll apply." The paramedic's eyes lit up. "What's there to think about? Go to medical school. Once you're trained, you can replace me, and I can retire peacefully." Ariel initially didn't take the paramedic's suggestion seriously. That time, he gave her grandmother N4, and she immediately felt better. But the relief was short-lived, and a few months later, Diana suffered another attack of her undiagnosed illness. Ariel had to wake Sergio in the middle of the night, and although he grumbled, he couldn't deny qualified help to an elderly villager. After examining her, he stated categorically, "That's it, Diana, you've overdone it. You need to be in the hospital. And the sooner, the better. You're having a hypertensive crisis." The elderly woman pleaded in a begging tone. "Sergio, I can't leave the house, and Ariel will be lost without me. Give me an injection like last time." The paramedic shook his head. "No, Diana, I can't take that responsibility. God forbid something happens to you, I'd have to answer for it. I don't want to end up behind bars in my old age." Ariel also tried to persuade her elderly relative, and she relented. "All right, you win. Call the ambulance." Sergio waved it off. "I'll drive you to the district hospital myself. Otherwise, waiting for them, you might as well pass away." Diana spent 3 weeks undergoing treatment in the therapeutic department. Ariel visited her every other day. The girl would spend an hour or an hour and a half with her grandmother, then rush to catch the bus. It was during this period that the girl realized that being a nurse or a doctor wasn't just a fashionable choice, but a calling. She watched with reverent awe as a very young nurse, almost her age, skillfully set up N4 for her grandmother and performed other necessary procedures. One day, she ventured to ask the girl in the white coat, "Tell me, is being a nurse very difficult?" The nurse smiled. "Every job has its specifics. But I love healing people. I've dreamed of it since I was a child." The young nurse spoke sincerely, her face glowing with a smile. At that moment, Ariel also wanted to give hope to the sick. She didn't immediately tell her grandmother about her desire to become a nurse, fearing that she wouldn't understand, but Diana even teared up with emotion. "Good for you, Ariel. You've chosen a noble profession. You will earn people's respect and honor all your life." Later, when her granddaughter was admitted to the first year of medical college, Diana instructed her, "Once you graduate, don't even think about coming back here. You can die of melancholy in this place. Try to get a job in the city, where you can have a normal life. Ariel, more than anything, I want you to be happy, then I will be joyful too." Ariel didn't want to disappoint her grandmother, so she studied with remarkable diligence. Her determination annoyed some of her classmates, but the teachers highly valued it. "Lopez, you definitely should apply to a university. You'll make a great doctor." Ariel herself secretly dreamed of continuing her education after college. But her plans were not destined to come to fruition. She was in her final year when she received a midweek call from her grandmother's neighbor. Aunt Felicia's voice trembled with anxiety. "Ariel, you need to come quickly. Your grandmother had a stroke yesterday." The girl rushed to the academic office to ask for a couple of days off. She had a bad feeling, so she hurried to get home, but it seemed like invisible obstacles were deliberately placed in her way. First, she missed the train and had to run to the bus station, where she barely managed to buy a ticket on the last bus. Ariel arrived at the district center almost at midnight. In the small town, she had no acquaintances to stay with, and her native village was 20 kilometers away, a substantial distance, especially dangerous for a young woman to travel alone at night. Considering all the negative circumstances, Ariel decided to wait for morning at the bus station. Although it was the peak of spring, it was still very cold at night. After an hour, the girl was chilled to the bone and, to warm up a bit, she started jogging around the bus station building. On her third lap, a SUV suddenly emerged from the night darkness. The car initially sped past her, but then turned around. Ariel felt a squeeze of fear inside her. She wanted to run, but her legs seemed glued to the asphalt. The SUV stopped next to her, and a male voice came from the open window. "Miss, can I help you with anything?" This voice snapped her out of her stupor, and she quickly moved away from the car to a safe distance. The stranger was surprised. "Miss, where are you going?" "Believe me, I have no bad intentions, and I genuinely want to help." The car door slammed, and Ariel flinched. She wanted the stranger to leave, so trying to maintain her composure, she replied, "Thank you, but don't worry. The first bus is at 5 in the morning, so I don't have long to wait." The man took a step forward, but Ariel defensively put her hands in front of her. "Don't come any closer, or I will scream." He threw up his hands in despair. What a wild situation. "You refuse help? Then freeze here until morning." The car door slammed again. Ariel flinched, not from fear of the stranger this time. It took her a fraction of a second to imagine how uncomfortable and cold her night would be. Ignoring the cries of reason, Ariel stopped. She ran to the car. "I'll accept your help on the condition that you don't bother me." The man laughed. "I won't, I swear. I'd even swear on a Bible if I had one, but all I have is an updated traffic code." Ariel asked. "Updated what?" The driver laughed again. "Traffic rules. I'm an experienced driver, but I always keep this important tone with me." Ariel was satisfied with the stranger's response and sat in the back seat closer to the door. The driver figured out her maneuver. "Miss, don't be afraid of me. I'm so tired, I just want to get home. I've been running around with documents all day, trying to register as an entrepreneur. I'm always missing one paper or another." Out of politeness, the girl asked, "What do you do?" Apparently, the driver was eager to share his experiences with someone, as he immediately responded, "I've long had the idea to go into farming. My education allows me to implement a personal project. I have a diploma in livestock product technology. After the academy, I worked a bit at a private enterprise owned by my father's friend, but working for someone else, even a very kind uncle, is not for me, so I decided to join the ranks of domestic farmers. I've completely talked your ear off. Where should I drop you off?" "You can drop me off at the stop, and I'll walk the rest of the way. It's not far, less than a kilometer to our village." Ariel felt an overwhelming desire to get out of the car as soon as possible. But the driver, whose face she couldn't make out, continued to insistently offer his services. "If you live in that village, we're almost headed the same way. I bought a small plot there. It used to be a farm which is now in ruins." Ariel blurted out without thinking, "My grandmother worked on that farm." Her mind was seared with an unpleasant thought. You're carelessly chatting with a stranger, and you've completely forgotten about your own grandmother. Apparently, in the short moment when she remembered the real reason for her unplanned trip, the driver had asked her something, but since she didn't catch the question, she had to ask him to repeat. "Sorry, I got distracted." "No worries, it happens to everyone. You said your grandmother worked on the farm, and I was asking where your relative is currently located." The girl felt a lack of air and took a deep breath. Only after that was she able to speak again. "My neighbor called me today and said that my grandmother is very ill. I had to leave my lectures because, besides my grandma, I have no one." Ariel was crying, and the unknown driver tried to comfort her as best he could. There's no need to get upset ahead of time. You have to believe in the best. He drove her right to her house and expressed his willingness to lend his strong shoulder again if needed. The girl thanked the random fellow traveler and ran to the house. She heard the SUV's owner shout, "We forgot to introduce ourselves. If you need to find me, ask for Pedro. I'm Ariel Lopez." In a moment, the car of the aspiring farmer disappeared into the night darkness. Ariel went up to the porch and pulled on the door. It was locked. Probably, her grandmother was in the hospital. She didn't want to disturb the neighbor in the middle of the night, but a bad feeling made her forget about the rules of decency. Ariel knocked on the neighbor's house, and almost immediately, the teary Aunt Felicia opened the door. "You've come, my dear. Such a tragedy. Your grandmother is very ill. The doctor said that she's unlikely to last until morning." But Diana couldn't leave without saying goodbye to her granddaughter. Her eyes lit up when she saw Ariel. The elderly woman couldn't speak, but her granddaughter understood what she wanted. The girl sat on the edge of the bed and touched the hand of her loved one. "Grandma, you must get better. I'll talk to your doctor and, if necessary, get the medicine that will help you get back on your feet." A tear rolled down Diana's cheek, and her lips silently murmured something. Ariel requested, "Grandma, you can tell me everything later. Right now, the most important thing for you is rest." The duty nurse entered the room and sternly looked at Ariel. "All right, young lady, it's time for you to go." The visitor hurried to the exit, where Aunt Felicia was waiting for her. The neighbor nodded towards the doors under a strict sign, "No entry for unauthorized persons." "I just spoke with the doctor. He said there's no hope." They spent all day in the hall near the ICU. In the evening, a nurse came out who allowed Ariel to say goodbye to her grandmother and informed her, "Your relative has passed away. Please accept my condolences." Grief weighed heavily on the young woman's shoulders. Ariel didn't know how she would live without her grandmother. The future seemed foggy and incomprehensible to her. The kind neighbor tried to comfort her. "My dear girl, life goes on. Diana was a strong-willed person, may she rest in peace. She never bent. And you should take an example from her." Aunt Felicia's words kept the orphan girl from completely falling into despair. After the funeral, she began to prepare for her journey. The neighbor bustled about with her. "Ariel, I've made some meat patties for you, and in that bag are some pies. You'll have something to snack on the road and something for dinner at the dorm." The girl thanked the kind woman and, grabbing her heavy bags, headed for the door. "I better go, or I'll miss the bus." Felicia stopped the girl. "Wait a minute. Ariel, I hate to ask you this, but I have to. I understand you haven't entered your house since your grandmother's death?" "Yes, Auntie. Something's holding me back. I can't bring myself to cross the threshold. Probably it's the stress. It'll pass eventually." The neighbor agreed. "Of course, it's hard to cope with the death of a loved one, but don't worry about your property. You are now the rightful heir. Shortly before her death, Diana secretly told me that she was very upset with her son, so she planned to transfer all her assets to you." The girl bitterly smiled. "Felicia, what assets does Grandma have? The house is good, solid, but there's nothing valuable in it. Most likely, I'll stay in the city and later sell the house. If you can, please keep an eye on it. Nowadays, many are eager to profit at others' expense." After her grandmother's funeral, Ariel did not appear in the village but regularly called the aunt to make sure her grandmother's house was still there. Ariel did not want a repeat of a recent lapse. To wake up on time for work, she asked her dormitory neighbor to wake her in the mornings. Sabina worked at a food company and woke up at 6 every day. She was a very dependable person, and after Ariel's request, she vigorously banged on the wall every morning. "Neighbor, wake up, the rooster crowed long ago." At first, Ariel appreciated Sabina's diligence, but when she woke her up at dawn on a weekend, she realized she hadn't considered the side effects of the good deed. It was too late to change the rules, and she didn't want to upset Sabina, so every morning when the neighbor signaled, she shouted, "Sabina, thanks, I'm getting up." That morning, the awakening began with the usual knocking. Ariel had slept well and decided to stretch a bit before breakfast. Running in rainy weather was sheer madness, and she performed some warm-up exercises right in her cramped room. A cup of strong coffee added to her energy, and Ariel leisurely headed to work. At the first floor near the elevator, a crowd had gathered, and she thought irritably, "I'll have to take the stairs again." She was about to head towards the service exit when the elevator arrived. Someone from the waiting crowd grabbed her arm, and before she knew it, she was inside the cabin. But her joy was premature, as one of the passengers left outside tried to hold the elevator. Ariel only needed a fleeting glance to recognize her old acquaintance. The hefty aunt in the same unchanged knitted jacket, like a true weightlifter, set her legs wide, creating a barrier for the automatic door. Ariel tried to reason with the woman. "What are you doing? You're going to break the elevator." The aunt didn't budge. "If I have to, I'll not only break the elevator but tear down your rotten hospital brick by brick, and you're not the one to tell me what to do, little snotty." Ariel's voice rang out. "You have no right to insult me. I work here." The aunt finally squeezed into the cabin, causing the elevator to overload. Everyone started to complain about her rude behavior, and Ariel, as an employee of the medical institution, demanded, "Ma'am, please leave. You're not in a hurry, and you can wait for the next one." The aunt became so agitated that she started to splutter. "You'll be the one to leave this place first. Do you know who you're talking to? I'll make sure they kick you out and give you a wolf's ticket on your way out." Ariel didn't want to continue the scandal and quickly exited the cabin, but on her way out, she threw back at the hefty woman. "Get lost with your threats." The aunt resorted to a previously tested method, namely blocking the elevator with her foot. "Where are you sending me?" Ariel smirked. "To a place where no trams, buses, or other forms of public transport go." The witnesses of this showdown laughed together. The elevator moved, but Ariel heard the aunt continue to send threats. Ariel reached her floor. Upon her appearance, Cano grumbled discontentedly. "Lopez, why are you so early today?" Ariel remarked with surprise. "Maria, you are never pleased. If I'm late, it's bad. If I come early, you're still not happy." "Of course, I'm not pleased. I haven't even had time to make the entries in the records." Ariel reassured her replacement. "You make the necessary marks, and I'll start by checking on the patients." Cano grimaced with a snide smile. "Sure, go ahead. They're eagerly waiting for you in room 5. One lady is particularly suffering, keeps asking when Ariel will show up." "Lopez, admit it, how do you win over everyone?" Cano's gaze burned with a mix of two potent emotions, envy and hatred. Ariel looked at her replacement with pity. "Maria, a hospital isn't a place where popularity is what matters. You just need to be a little kinder to people." Cano flared up. "Lopez, watch yourself around the corners. It's not for you to teach me. I've nearly 3 years of experience, while you're still making one mistake after another." Ariel decided not to argue with the shift nurse. To avoid further irritation, she went on her rounds alone. When she returned to the station, Cano, as if nothing had happened, chirped, "All right, Ariel, you can take over now." The girl quickly switched into work mode, pushing aside all other thoughts. In the afternoon, an unexpected guest appeared. Leo Mudara. Seeing the head nurse's husband, Ariel stood up. "Hello, Leo. Is Patricia in the department right now?" The man inquired. "And where exactly is she?" The young nurse replied. "She's in surgery, but you can wait for her in the office." Mudara smiled. "I'd much rather have a little chat with such a lovely young lady as yourself." Although the regional health department official spoke to her with exaggerated politeness, his eyes conveyed a clearly unprofessional interest. Leo asked her if she liked her job, what her future plans were. The girl responded succinctly, afraid to meet the man's gaze. Her confusion was interpreted by Mudara in his own way. He approached her so closely that she could feel his breath on her cheek. But Leo thought it wasn't enough and covered the girl's hands with his. We danced so well together that time, I would love to continue our lessons in choreography. This candidness from a high-ranking official was unexpected for the young girl. She tried to free her hand, but Mudara looked her straight in the eyes and smirked smugly. You haven't answered my question. How do you feel about meeting up outside of work? Ariel's mind was in turmoil. She tried to think of a polite way to rebuff the aging Don Juan without offending him. And at that critical moment, Patricia appeared in the department. She gave the pair a fiery look, but said very calmly, even cheerfully, "Oh, Leo, you're here already?" Mudara, unembarrassed, replied, "Yes, I got off a bit early and you weren't here. You're always busy, saving lives." The head nurse nodded towards the ward nurse. "But I see you haven't wasted your time in my absence." The man beamed with a happy smile. "Yes, I had a little chat with this young creature. It's my duty to know what our youth needs, what it breathes." Patricia grimaced. "Leo, save your speeches." The head nurse gave Ariel a very meaningful look and headed to her office. Mudara winked at her as he left. "My offer still stands. Let me know when you decide." With a magician's flourish, he pulled out a business card and placed it on top of the patient charts. He then followed his wife. Ariel tore up the business card into small pieces. She couldn't even entertain the thought that something might happen between her and the head nurse's husband. Her cheeks burned with shame and her palms were sweaty. All attempts to calm her nerves failed. To distract herself, she headed to the treatment room. She heard the door to the office slam and sighed with relief. It seemed he had left. But her relief was premature, as suddenly the head nurse's voice sounded behind her. "Lopez, I warned you." Ariel was so startled by Patricia's sudden appearance that she instinctively clutched at her heart. "You scared me, Patricia," the head nurse remarked snidely. "Yes, the element of surprise always works. I've proven that many times, and today I got extra confirmation. But it's not about you not hearing me enter the procedure room. It's all because of these special shoes, the slippers." The head nurse extended her foot forward, showing off the leather slippers required for entering the surgical block. "Today, Lopez, I also realized that much is hidden in such a stinky swamp as you." Patricia lunged at the young nurse and grabbed her by the collar of her coat. "I will leave no stone unturned with you. Who do you think you're competing with?" Ariel struggled to free herself. "Patricia, what are you talking about?" Driven by jealousy, the woman hissed. "It's all the same, dear. I know what's on your mind. Your thoughts are written in bold across your foolish face. You want to lure my husband to gain a favorable position through the back door. But I've figured out your plan." Ariel ripped her coat free from Patricia's grasp. The fabric tore, and the collar detached from the main part of the coat. The young nurse could no longer contain herself. "Patricia, your old goat is of no interest to anyone. Maybe you should put a bell on him so he won't stray from you." Mudara pushed the subordinate away. "Watch out, Lopez. I'm done playing games with you." Ariel barely kept her balance as the head nurse disappeared into her office. Desperate, the young nurse thought, now she'll definitely eat me alive. Maybe I should preempt her and resign on my own? This idea seemed rational, but she didn't manage to write the resignation. Mudara called her in again. This time, it wasn't about her husband but a patient from the endocrinology department. Patricia's voice vibrated with fatigue. "Lopez, what am I to do with you? How do you manage to stand out everywhere? A patient has complained about you twice." Mudara shipped the complaint form. "I have to respond to this alert. You understand that if the chief finds out about your antics, we'll all be in trouble, including me." Ariel stood at attention. "Patricia, I'll do whatever is necessary." The head nurse sighed with relief. Good that you understand. Talk to this troublemaker, apologize if you have to. Ariel nodded frequently. All right, Patricia, I'll try to resolve everything. The young nurse couldn't wait for the end of her shift and quickly handed over her duties to Hernandez, then ran to resolve the conflict. But in the endocrinology department, she learned that the complaining patient had already been discharged. Ariel, believe it or not, that lady drove us all nuts. We're glad to be rid of her. Ariel had no choice but to head home with nothing resolved. The only small joy was that the next day was her day off. But she couldn't relax and rest. Early in the morning, before Sabina could knock on the wall, her cell phone rang. It was Hernandez. What happened? Hernandez shouted. Ariel, I didn't think you'd set me up like this, but I told them everything as it is because I'm not taking the fall for someone else's mistakes. Can you explain what happened? Can I? You had barely left when the inspectors arrived, checking everything, especially the storage rules for Group A and B drugs. And? Everything was in order. Hernandez asked with undisguised malice. Are you sure? Ariel felt her heart sink. Laya, tell me, what's wrong? When I took over from Maria, everything was fine. Did you count the ampoules for the powerful drugs? No, I just checked the log. Ariel, there is a shortage and a lot is missing. Mudara said you were the last one in the procedure room. She saw you there personally. Laya, what's going to happen now? I don't want to scare you prematurely, but you know very well what this could mean for you. But it wasn't me. Why would I set myself up? Then someone set you up. I don't want to get involved in this mess. I'm just warning you. Though, essentially, you've put the whole department in jeopardy. Hernandez hung up, and Ariel sat staring at her phone. She was horrified at the thought of what awaited her. She couldn't believe what she had just heard from her friend. She hoped this absurd misunderstanding would be resolved soon. The commuter train followed its usual route, and Ariel could not believe how just one day had drastically changed her life. She watched as raindrops streamed down the window glass, crying in unison with the spring downpour. The farther the train took her from the city, the worse she felt, as it seemed to her that all the best had been left behind in a place she could never return to. Ariel didn't want to remember the events of the past few days, the shame and humiliation she had endured, but thoughts that made her fluctuate between hot and cold kept breaking through her barrier of denial. It all started with that morning call from Hernandez. Ariel hadn't recovered from her conversation with Laya when two policemen burst into her room without knocking. Patricia accompanied the officers, which greatly surprised Ariel. In confusion, she said, "Hello, Patricia. Have you come for me? Did Maria Cano not show up for her shift?" Mudara ignored Ariel's questions but spoke to the men accompanying her. "Look at this. And she's our newest recruit. Would I ever have thought that such a bright girl harbored dark thoughts? Probably she hasn't managed to sell the ampoules yet." One of the policemen reassured Mudara. "Don't worry, we'll find everything in 5 seconds." The officer nodded to his partner. "Go ahead, Cielo, but without too much zeal. It's still a dormitory, not private housing." The one called Cielo by the chief opened a closet and carelessly began tossing Ariel's clothes from the hangers onto the floor. Ariel watched in shock. "Can I know what's happening?" The policeman nodded. "You have the right. Everything's according to the law. Here, a search warrant." The chief showed her the document with a seal and quickly hid it. "You are suspected of stealing medical supplies for resale. This act is punishable by law." Ariel burst out. "That's not true. I didn't take anything. Someone's just set me up." Mudara threw a contemptuous glance at her. "Been watching too much romantic mush on TV and talking nonsense. All the evidence is against you. Better confess where you hid the ampoules." Ariel couldn't believe this was happening to her. She shouted again. "I have nothing. I have no idea what ampoules you're talking about." Cielo smirked. Everyone cries at first, some even tear their hair out, but when pressed with facts, they start confessing. And you, miss, are resisting in vain. Better tell us where the missing ampoules from the safe are. You'd ease your conscience, and we'd have less work. Ariel was on the brink of a breakdown. I didn't take anything from the safe. The policeman slowly inspected the modest belongings of the former student. Ariel noticed they kept looking back at Mudara, as if waiting for a specific signal. Ariel also fixed her gaze on Patricia, who cringed under her stare. The policeman turned everything upside down in her tiny room but found no stolen medicines. About half an hour later, they left in the company of Mudara. After they were gone, Ariel was left shaking nervously, realizing a spectacle had been staged before her, but not knowing why. Everything became clear the next day. In the morning, Ariel went to her department to replace Kano, but Maria was shockingly surprised at her appearance. Lopez, why have you crawled back here? Ariel was also surprised by this question. What do you mean? It's my shift according to the schedule. Maria sneered maliciously. Seems like you're out of the loop. You're fired, aren't you? I'm not sure, but I heard that you no longer work here. You've messed up our entire schedule, and now Laya is supposed to come in for a double shift tomorrow while I cover for 2 shifts. Ariel was stunned. She wanted to run away, but couldn't move. The door to the head nurse's office was slightly ajar, and Mudara's voice carried through. Maria, I hear Ariel has come. Kano responded. Yes, Patricia. Does she not know that she no longer works here? The head nurse appeared in the doorway. Maria, how many times have I asked you not to jump ahead? Nothing has been decided yet. Mudara gave Ariel a scorching look. Ariel, go see the director. Maybe you can persuade him to have mercy on you. Ariel shuffled toward the exit. But she hadn't left the department yet because Kano suddenly exclaimed from the treatment room. Holy smokes! The ampoules are in place. Patricia, the missing items have been found. Ariel returned to the nurse's station. She looked hopefully at the head nurse. I told you I didn't take anything. Maybe it was just overlooked during the check. Mudara grabbed her arm. Yeah, right. Tell me another story. You hid them yourself. You came early in the morning and put back what you stole. Kano was shocked. Patricia. Ariel couldn't have. She just arrived, and I've had the safe keys in my pocket. Mudara slammed her hand on the table. Kano, shut your mouth. And you, Ariel, go see the director. Your maneuver has been figured out. You didn't fool me. Gallardo met the accused nurse with a long silence. Ariel stood at the door for several minutes while Ramon ignored her presence, shuffling through folders on his desk before making a call. The uncertainty was agonizing for her, but she was too afraid to move. Finally, the chief medical officer asked, Well, Ariel, got yourself in trouble? I didn't expect this from you. You came so highly recommended, and I believed it. You've let everyone down, so this conversation will be short. Write your resignation and get out before you're kicked out for good. And thank your lucky stars it's not a legal matter. My kindness saved you. Pity, such a young fool. Ariel hung her head. She knew there was no point in arguing in her situation. When Gallardo had said all he thought about her, she quietly left his office. Ariel desperately wanted to share her troubles with someone, but she was forbidden from being in the department, and her former colleagues glared at her like she was a pariah. She slowly walked back to her dormitory. She spent the whole day lying down, staring at the ceiling. When sounds from the next room indicated that Sabina had returned from work, Ariel knocked on her door. Sabina, are you busy? Not at all. I'm free as a bird. Come on in. Ariel shared her troubles with Sabina, who gasped and didn't stop hurling colorful epithets at Ariel's supervisor and colleagues. Monsters. Scum. They were troubled by an orphan girl. Don't worry, Ariel, what goes around comes around. Your boss and the others will get what's coming to them. This was clearly set up by someone in your own department. It looks like something went wrong, so they decided to call off their operation. But don't despair. Everything will pass, and you'll find another job. Nurses are needed everywhere. But now, you'd better leave town. If you want, I can give you the address of a good friend of mine. She lives in another city. Ariel liked Sabina's idea. Exactly. I need a change of scenery. I'll go to the countryside for a couple of weeks and try to sell my grandmother's house. I really need the money right now. Sabina sighed heavily. Yes, we always need money. I'm desperately short myself. They stayed up late that evening. Sabina also shared her story of failed love and betrayal by a friend. And Ariel felt a little relief. I'm not the only one suffering. Others have it tough too. But they don't throw themselves into hysterics. I'll try to start a new life. Maybe I'll get lucky. In the morning, Ariel returned her room keys to the dorm supervisor and then headed to the train station. She was eager to sort out things in the village and then move to a new city where she could start afresh. Felicia was bustling around the guests. You could have warned me of your arrival. I would have prepared, instead of you dropping in unexpectedly like this. Ariel didn't want to burden the kind neighbor with her problems, so she blurted out the first thing that came to mind. Felicia, circumstances just changed suddenly. A classmate of mine has settled down well in another city and has invited me to join her. The neighbor looked skeptically at the girl. The grass is always greener on the other side. You said you were lucky with your job. Ariel murmured uncertainly. Yes, I like my job, but I don't have friends here, and I have a friend in the city. Aunt Felicia, disapproving, shook her head. That's youth for you, always wanting everything at once. It's none of my business, but I would advise you not to rush into selling your grandmother's house. You should stay here. Our local medic is retiring soon. You wouldn't be without a job. Ariel quickly looked away. Aunt Felicia, I can't stay in the village. What would I do in this backwater? The neighbor sighed. I understand, there are no prospects here. Sure, life isn't as lively as in the city, but someone has to live here too. Imagine what it would be like if everyone rushed to the city. Aunt Felicia paused briefly before continuing. It's good not everyone is looking for an easy life. Take that farmer, for instance. He left the city and doesn't regret it at all. Such a nice young man, respectful to everyone. Felicia paused for a moment, then exclaimed joyfully. How could I forget? He's looking to buy a house, preferably close to his farm. From our village to his farm is no more than a 10-minute walk. If you want, I can call him right now. He left his business card with me. I'm sure he would like your grandmother's house. Ariel was surprised by her neighbor's initiative. Aunt Felicia, thank you for caring. Call this man, but not today. I'm very tired from the journey. I need to rest a bit. And I need to visit my grandmother's grave. The neighbor approved of the girl's decision. That's the right thing to do. How long has it been since the funeral? Almost a year, and I haven't been here since then. Aunt Felicia, has my father visited? Oh yes, he came. Went to the cemetery, left 2 carnations, and then left immediately. Ariel, do you keep in touch with him? No, Aunt Felicia. My father doesn't want to see me. He has another family and feels quite happy without me. Felicia was about to say something but changed her mind. She fed her guest, and after a hearty lunch, suggested she rest. But Ariel politely declined. I'll go to the cemetery first, I'll rest later. I'm staying at my grandmother's house tonight. Aren't you scared? Not anymore. Do as you think best. If you want, I can go with you to the cemetery. Ariel politely declined. Thank you, Aunt Felicia, but I want to be alone. I want to talk to my grandmother, as she needs to hear me. A glint of hope shone in the girl's eyes, and Felicia felt a lump in her throat. Of course, your grandmother will hear you. Wait, I'll cut some flowers for you to put on the grave. The elderly woman quickly left the house but returned in just a few minutes with a bunch of pristine white daffodils. Ariel spent almost 2 hours at the cemetery. It was only there, at the grave of her closest relative, that she allowed herself to cry. She cried and begged her deceased grandmother for help. "Grandma, I'm so miserable and lonely without you. Only now do I realize how important it is to have people who love you nearby. But I'm not needed by anyone, not even by my own father." In a surge of emotion, Ariel involuntarily touched the neat mound, and for a very brief moment, it felt not like the sun-warmed earth under her palm, but like her grandmother's warm hand. But this sensation did not frighten Ariel, it brought her joy. "Grandma, I know you can hear me. I talked to you, and now I feel much lighter." Ariel returned to the village as the sun was setting. She cautiously stepped into her grandmother's house and immediately collapsed onto the bed, exhausted. The troubles of recent days receded, and her young body, as if wrapped in a cozy blanket, was enveloped in pleasant fatigue. As soon as Ariel closed her eyes, she saw her grandmother's figure. Above Diana's head shone a dazzling halo, and in her dream, Ariel thought, she glows like an icon. Grandma was smiling but said nothing. Remarkably, in this dream, Ariel saw herself as a little girl. She even recognized her favorite dress, which her grandmother had given her for her 8th birthday. Ariel clearly understood that everything happening to her was just a dream. No sooner had she thought about it than her grandmother spoke. "I wanted to tell you this in the hospital, but I didn't have the chance. I haven't used the old stove for a long time, but you should check the oven. I've hidden a little gift for you in there for your wedding." The last thing Ariel remembered from her dream was her grandmother approaching that very stove, the one she used to cook food for the piglets, and opening the oven. At that moment, her dream was cut off, and the girl didn't understand what had caused her sudden awakening. She closed her eyes again, hoping to see the continuation of her dream, but then there was a knock at the window. Overcoming her fear, the girl jumped out of bed and rushed to the window. In the moonlight, she saw a familiar silhouette and breathed a sigh of relief. "It's Aunt Felicia. I wonder what made her come running to me in the middle of the night." To get an answer to that question, the girl threw open the window and called to her neighbor. "Aunt Felicia, come into the house. I'll open the door for you right now." The neighbor burst in through the open doors, breathing heavily, and her face expressed the highest degree of excitement. "Ariel, I urgently need your help. The paramedic went to the district to see his daughter and won't be back until tomorrow. Oh, give me some water to drink, my mouth is on fire." The elderly woman sat down on a stool that stood nearby the door. "Oh, I have no strength left, I ran so fast." Ariel scooped some water from a bucket and handed the cup to her neighbor. "Aunt Felicia, who needs my help?" The neighbor drank greedily, draining almost the entire cup, and finally said, "The young farmer got injured, apparently hurt his arm. His worker called me and said the guy is bleeding, asking for the paramedic, but he left for the district yesterday." Felicia began to describe the events of the previous day again, but Ariel was no longer listening. She quickly got dressed, then rolled her old bicycle out of the closet. Aunt Felicia grew anxious. "Ariel, you won't get lost, or I'll have to come rescue you," the girl exclaimed. "I know every stone and every tree around here." The remnants of her dream instantly vanished from the girl's mind as she entered the small, dimly lit room where the victim was. The first thing that caught her eye was a white cloth of questionable freshness. In simple terms, this rag was wrapped around the man's wrist. The woman accompanying Ariel muttered in confusion, "I don't know much about medicine, I did what I could. I had to stop the bleeding somehow. At first, I wanted to call an ambulance, but that's a useless number. By the time they get here from the district, the person will bleed out." Ariel reproachfully remarked, "It's good that first aid was provided. But couldn't you find something cleaner for the bandage? You should have a first aid kit." Suddenly, the injured man spoke up. "There's a first aid kit. Gloria, go to my office. There's a first aid kit in the cupboard, bring it here." Ariel treated the cut, then applied a clean bandage. She asked the farmer, "How did you get hurt?" "I wanted to sharpen my tools, but I couldn't manage it. My hand slipped, and here's the result." The man lifted his hand a little, but Ariel sternly said, "Try not to make any unnecessary movements, it could reopen the wound. You should really have stitches because the wound is quite deep." The farmer chuckled. "Everything heals quickly on me, like on a dog. Sorry to bother you in the middle of the night, but Gloria was so frightened that I couldn't stop her." He looked at Ariel and smiled mysteriously. The girl found it strange and asked, "Why are you looking at me like that, as if we've met before?" The farmer couldn't hide his joy. "We have met, but unfortunately, you've forgotten me." The man wanted to remind her under what circumstances they had met, but Ariel stopped him. "Wait, I'll remember myself. That's why your voice sounded so familiar to me. You're Pedro, right?" The young man forgot about his injured arm. "You hit the nail on the head. I was the one who gave you a ride that April night when you were hurrying to your grandmother's." A shadow crossed the girl's face. "Yes, I managed to see her alive, but the next day my grandmother passed away." The farmer felt guilty. "I'm sorry for reminding you so clumsily. I swear, I didn't mean to hurt you." "Don't apologize, I've gotten used to my grandmother being gone. Time really does heal. Well, I have to go now. You should take a break too, and I'll come by tomorrow." Pedro remarked cheerfully, "There's no need to worry." Ariel replied, "There is. I wouldn't be concerned if you had received proper first aid, but there's a risk of infection from the wound." The farmer laughed, "I'm more scared of the unfamiliar words." The girl smiled. "All right, I'll put it simply. Your wound is quite extensive, so dangerous microorganisms might have gotten into it from that rag." Pedro let out another pleased exclamation. "Wow, it's really helpful talking to you. I'd even be willing to take individual lessons from you." The girl smiled. "I'd gladly teach you, but I can't. I'm leaving soon. Once I sell my grandmother's house, I'm going to visit a friend in another city." The farmer asked, "You're selling the house, and I'm actually looking for suitable accommodation. Can I come by tomorrow?" Ariel reminded the farmer about his injured hand. "You should refrain from traveling by any means for now, but I'll keep you in mind as a potential buyer." Dawn was already breaking over the horizon when Ariel returned home. Her meeting with the young farmer stirred the girl's imagination. She remembered his gaze and smile, and she longed to see him again. Ariel had never had serious relationships with the opposite sex, and Madar's advances left a very unpleasant impression in her heart. There was a moment when she despaired, thinking she must be abnormal if adult men were attracted to her. The nighttime encounter with the old acquaintance instilled hope in her heart that her life could still improve. With this optimistic thought, she collapsed onto her bed and fell asleep immediately. A full night's rest rejuvenated her young body, and Ariel decided to tidy up the house a bit. She dusted, washed the floors, and only then remembered the strange dream involving her grandmother. The girl cautiously opened the oven and saw a white bundle in the farthest corner. A thought flashed through her mind: who can believe in dreams after this? Her grandmother's gift was wrapped in old newspaper and then in a clean linen towel with embroidered roosters along the edges. With a pounding heart, Ariel unwrapped the bundle layer by layer until she reached a plastic bag filled with money. The banknotes of various denominations were neatly folded and secured with a hair tie. Along with the money was a short note: "Do not use until the wedding." Ariel understood that the second part of the message Diana had written for herself, in case she felt tempted to use the savings. "Grandma, how wonderful you are. Thank you. I'll try to spend this money strictly for its intended purpose." These words sounded like a vow, and Ariel began to doubt whether she should sell the house and leave the places familiar to her since childhood. In this uncertain state, she set off for the farm, where Pedro was already eagerly waiting for her. "Ariel, here's your patient's report. I feel excellent. I followed all your instructions to the letter." The patient's joking tone made the girl smile. Your good mood says a lot, but I still need to examine your wound. The girl performed all the necessary procedures and, with undisguised surprise, concluded, indeed, it's even better than I expected. I told you everything would heal before the wedding. An unpleasant chill ran down Ariel's spine. You're planning to get married? Congratulations in advance. So you decided to buy a house to provide decent living conditions for your young wife? The farmer stopped smiling. He looked at Ariel with the same piercing gaze that penetrated straight to her heart. Unfortunately, I haven't met a girl who would agree to be my wife. To be more precise, my past experience was disheartening, and now I don't dare and even fear close relationships. So that's why you moved here? You guessed it. I had a decent business in the city. Of course, money wasn't flowing in, but I lacked for nothing and could adequately provide for a family. Excuse me, I don't even want to say her name out loud. In short, the girl who agreed to be my wife and I had been together since school. She waited for me to return from the army, then I went to school, and she waited again. Her loyalty simply amazed me, and I was sure she was the best woman in the world. But everything collapsed 2 days before the wedding. Pedro bitterly smirked. Basically, it all followed the genre's rules. I left important documents at home and rushed back without warning to get them. And there was my almost wife with my best friend and business partner. I didn't want to make a scene or throw punches. I silently gathered my things and left, going wherever my eyes led me. Ariel was shocked by the farmer's story. She thought that all her misfortunes were nothing compared to what this man had endured. She felt an overwhelming urge to do something kind for him. Pedro, if you'd like, I can stay in the village until you fully recover. Pedro smiled. Ariel, please don't take this the wrong way, but I don't want you to leave. Of course, your grandmother's house is the best thing I've been offered, and I would gladly buy it. Ariel, don't rush to change your life drastically. People often fail to notice their happiness and then regret it for the rest of their lives. The girl felt that her fate was being decided at that moment. Happiness was so close, she only needed to reach out to touch it, but she was afraid of scaring it away and simply whispered, I haven't figured myself out yet. Everything has come at once. First my grandmother's sudden death, then troubles at work. I wasn't prepared for such a test. You can't prepare for something like this because troubles love to attack out of nowhere. But I've realized one thing, no matter how awful the circumstances, you must believe in the good. Ariel decided not to tempt fate any longer. She stayed in her hometown and replaced the old paramedic in his position. The money she found in the old stove was spent strictly for its intended purpose. She bought a luxurious wedding dress and expensive jewelry. The wedding of the young farmer and the nurse became the main event in the entire district. For several months, the smallest details of the vibrant celebration were discussed. Ariel invited her father to her wedding, but he did not come. The girl sadly thought about how all ties were now completely severed. But 2 years after the wedding, when a small heir had already appeared in their family, Gonzalo unexpectedly showed up. It was freezing outside, so the young couple was very surprised when someone timidly knocked on the window late in the evening. Ariel grumbled, it's probably Aunt Felicia bringing her latest idea and wanting to jump around in this cold. Pedro laughed. Ariel, you shouldn't judge people for their initiative. I'll go open the door. Pedro opened the door, but on the doorstep stood an unfamiliar man. His face was red from the cold, and his eyebrows were covered in snow. The farmer asked, Who are you looking for? I'd like to speak to Ariel. I'm her father, Gonzalo. The daughter didn't push her father away. She listened to him first and learned that fate hadn't spared him either. His second wife and their young son had died in an accident, and his stepson had thrown him out of the apartment. Gonzalo had started drinking, which cost him a good job. The man looked at her pleadingly, Daughter, I beg you, don't drive me away. I have only you to rely on. Ariel wanted to pour out everything she thought of the man who had once betrayed her, right in his face. But she opened the door for him and quietly said, Come in, Dad. This is your home too.
If you're enjoying it as well, leave a like and subscribe to the channel.